Stop them! They can't come in here!
The bride's voice cut sharply through the music, loud enough to turn heads. At the grand entrance of the wedding venue, security guards froze as they held back an elderly couple and a simply dressed young woman. Guests in glittering outfits paused mid-laughter, their eyes shifting toward the commotion. "I said I don't know them," the bride added, her voice trembling now, not with fear, but with urgency. The elderly man leaned heavily on a walking stick, his hands shaking. The woman beside him clutched her wrapper tightly, her eyes already filling with tears. The younger woman standing with them didn't say anything at first. She just stared straight at the bride. That stare carried years of silence. "Please, just let us talk to her," the older woman begged, her voice cracking. But the bride turned her face away, as if looking at them would stain her. "Escort them out," she said coldly. And just like that, the past she had buried was dragged into the light. Years earlier, in a small, worn-out house at the edge of town, life had never been easy. The walls were cracked, the roof leaked during heavy rain, and every meal was carefully planned to stretch as far as possible. But despite everything,
the father woke up every morning before dawn, determined to provide. His limp slowed him down, but it never stopped him. "Papa, you should rest today," the elder daughter would often say, watching him struggle with his shoes. He would smile faintly. "Rest won't put food on the table, my daughter." Her name was Kemi. She was quiet, observant, and far wiser than her age. While other girls chased trends and laughter, Kemi carried responsibility like a second skin. Then there was the younger one, Sade. Sade didn't just walk into a room. She owned it. Her beauty turned heads everywhere she went. Even in their poor neighborhood, people whispered about her. "That girl is too fine for this kind of house," neighbors would say. And slowly, that idea began to shape everything. "Sade, eat this one," their mother would say, pushing the bigger portion of food toward her. "What about Kemi?" the father would sometimes ask, though his voice lacked conviction. "She's older. She understands," their mother would reply. Kemi always nodded, even when her stomach growled. "I'm okay," she would say softly. But she wasn't. The difference in treatment grew with time. Sade got new clothes when there was barely enough money. Kemi managed with hand-me-downs and quiet acceptance. Still, Kemi loved her sister. "Sade, you can use my notes," she would offer during exams. Sade barely looked up. "Just leave it there." There was no thank you. There never was. One evening, everything changed. The father returned home later than usual, his face tense but glowing with something unfamiliar. Hope. "What happened?" their mother asked immediately. He sat down slowly, exhaling. "My boss, he said I did something no one else would have done." "What did you do?" Kemi asked. "There was a mistake at work, money that wasn't accounted for. I could have kept quiet, but I reported it." Their mother frowned. "And?" He said because of my honesty, he wants to sponsor one of my children abroad." The room fell silent. "Abroad," Sade whispered, her eyes lighting up. "Yes, full education, everything covered." Kemi's heart skipped, but she stayed quiet. Then came the question that would change their lives forever. "Which one of them?" their mother asked. The father hesitated. Sade sat up straighter, already imagining a life far from the cracked walls and leaking roof. "Kemi is the more serious one," the father said slowly. But their mother shook her head immediately. Sade has more presence. Opportunities will open for her faster. Kemi felt the words hit her chest, but she kept her face still. Sade will represent the family better, their mother continued. She has the look, the confidence. Kemi lowered her eyes. Her father glanced at her, then looked away. Sade, he said finally. And just like that, it was decided. That night, Kemi lay awake staring at the ceiling, listening to her sister's excited whispers. I'm finally leaving this place, Sade said to herself. Kemi turned to the wall, her eyes stinging. Congratulations, she had said earlier, forcing a smile. Sade barely noticed. Preparation moved quickly. Documents, arrangements, goodbyes.
On the day Sade left, their mother cried loudly, holding her tightly. Don't forget us, she said. Sade smiled. How can I forget? But even then, something in her eyes had already started to shift. At the airport, Kemi stood quietly beside their father. Take care of yourself, she told her sister. Sade nodded, distracted. Send me pictures, Kemi added. Of course, Sade replied. But she never really did. The first few months, Sade called regularly. Mummy, I need money for this. Papa, there's another expense. And somehow, despite their struggles, money was sent. Kemi, help us manage this, their mother would say. Kemi nodded, even when it meant skipping her own needs. I'll handle it, she would reply. But slowly, the calls became less frequent. I'm busy, Sade would say. Then weeks would pass. Then months. Until one day, the calls stopped completely. Mummy, have you heard from her? Kemi asked gently. Her mother shook her head, worry creeping in. She'll call, the father said, though his voice carried doubt. But Sade didn't call. Not that week, not the next. Not even after months turned into years. And somewhere far away, in a world of polished floors and bright lights, Sade had already decided. She no longer belonged to them. 7 years passed, and in those 7 years, 2 completely different lives were built from the same beginning. Kemi's morning started before sunrise. The house hadn't changed much. The same cracked walls, the same aging roof. But something inside it had shifted. Responsibility now rested fully on her shoulders. Mummy, take your medicine first, she would say, placing a cup of water into her mother's hands. Her father sat quietly nearby, his walking stick leaning against the wall. Age and illness had slowed him even more. Kemi, you don't have to do all this alone, he would sometimes say. She would smile faintly. Who else will do it, Papa? He had no answer. While others her age were celebrating graduation ceremonies and new beginnings, Kemi built her own path in silence. She worked during the day, small jobs, anything she could find, and studied at night. Online courses, certifications, late nights under a dim bulb. No applause, no recognition. Sometimes her mother would sigh, if only Sade was here. Kemi would pause for a second, then continue what she was doing. She's not here, she would reply softly, but we are. There was no bitterness in her voice, just truth. Meanwhile, far away, Sade's life had transformed completely. Her apartment overlooked the city skyline. Her wardrobe was filled with clothes she once only saw in magazines. Her accent had changed, her posture refined, her circle elevated.
and her past erased. "Sade, where are you from again?" one of her colleagues asked during a dinner. She smiled lightly, swirling her drink. "It's complicated." "Come on," another pressed. "Family? Parents?" She hesitated for just a second, then said the words that would define everything that followed. They passed away years ago. It came out so easily, it almost scared her. But no one questioned it. And from that moment, the lie became her truth. Calls from home had stopped long ago, not because her parents stopped trying, but because she stopped answering. Eventually, even they grew tired of hoping. "She will come back one day," her mother would say sometimes. But even she no longer sounded convinced. One evening, Kemi returned home exhausted, dropping her bag beside the door. "Mummy, I got paid today," she said, trying to sound cheerful. Her mother looked up weakly. "That's good, my daughter." Kemi hesitated, then added, "I also completed another course." "Oh," her mother replied absently. That was it. No excitement, no questions. Kemi nodded slowly, hiding the flicker of disappointment in her eyes. "Dinner will be ready soon," she said, heading into the kitchen. Outside, the sky darkened, just like the quiet weight settling in her chest. Years of effort. And still invisible. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Then one afternoon, everything shifted again. A woman from their old neighborhood rushed into the compound, breathless. "Kemi! Kemi!" Kemi stepped outside quickly. "What happened?" "I saw her," the woman said. Kemi frowned. "Who?" "Your sister!" Everything went still. "Sade?" Kemi asked carefully. "Yes, I saw her with my own eyes. She's back in Nigeria." Kemi's grip tightened slightly. "Are you sure?" "I'm telling you the truth. She was with a man, a rich man. They looked like they were going somewhere important." Kemi's heart began to beat faster, but her face remained calm. "Did she see you?" she asked. The woman shook her head. "No, but I followed them for a while. I even found out where they're staying." Behind Kemi, her mother had already come outside. "What is she saying?" she asked anxiously.
Kemi turned slowly. She said, "Sade is back." Her mother gasped, her hands flying to her chest. "My daughter?" Hope rushed into her eyes instantly, replacing years of pain. "She came back. She finally came back." Her father stood up slowly, his hands trembling. "We have to see her." Kemi hesitated. Something didn't sit right. If Sade was truly back, why hadn't she come home? But she didn't voice that thought. "Where is she staying?" she asked the woman. The address was given. And just like that, a journey began. One driven by hope for some and quiet caution for another. The next day, they prepared to go. "Kemi, wear something nice," her mother said excitedly. "We don't want her to think we are still suffering." Kemi looked down at her simple clothes, then nodded. "Okay, Mummy." Inside, she felt something she couldn't quite name. Not excitement, not anger, just distance. They arrived at the house, a large, elegant building in a high-end area. Cars lined the driveway. Everything about it screamed wealth.
Her mother's eyes widened. Is this where she lives? Kemi said nothing. They approached the gate. A security guard stepped forward immediately. Yes? We are here to see Sade, Kemi said calmly. Do you have an appointment? The guard asked. No, her mother replied quickly. We are her parents. The guard's expression didn't change. Please wait. Minutes later, the door opened. And there she was. Sade stepped out, dressed in elegance, her hair perfectly styled, her presence commanding. For a moment, no one spoke. Then her mother rushed forward. Sade! She cried, her voice breaking with emotion. But Sade didn't move. She just stared at them. Cold. Unfamiliar. Who are you? She asked. The words landed like a slap. Her mother froze mid-step. Sade, it's me, your mother. Sade's expression didn't change. I think you have the wrong person, she said. Kemi felt her chest tighten, but she stayed silent. Sade, stop this, her father said, his voice shaking. It's us. Sade glanced around nervously, noticing a few people watching. I don't know these people, she said firmly to the security. Kemi finally spoke. Sade. Just her name. Nothing else. But it carried everything. Sade looked at her. For a brief second, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition. Then it disappeared. Please escort them out, she said. And just like that, the door closed on them. Her mother collapsed into tears. My own child, she sobbed. Her father stood frozen, unable to speak. Kemi swallowed hard, her eyes fixed on the closed door. She had expected distance, but not this. Never this. Let's go, she said quietly. And they left. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because Sade had no idea that her past was about to walk straight into her future. The day of the wedding arrived with all the grandeur Sade had always dreamed of. The venue shimmered with wealth, gold-trimmed decorations, perfectly arranged flowers, and guests dressed in elegance. Laughter filled the air, glasses clinked, cameras flashed. Everything looked perfect. Exactly the life she had fought to create. Inside the bridal suite, Sade sat in front of a large mirror.
As makeup artists made final touches, "You look stunning," one of them said. Sade smiled faintly, staring at her reflection. I know. But beneath that confidence, something unsettled lingered. A knock came on the door. It's time, someone said. She stood up slowly, adjusting her dress, taking a deep breath. This was it. The moment everything would be sealed. As she stepped out, the music began, and all eyes turned to her. She walked gracefully, every step calculated, every movement controlled. No one could see the past she had buried. No one, except it wasn't buried anymore. At the entrance, a small commotion had started. Guests turned, murmuring. Who are those people? Why are they here? Sade's heart skipped. She followed their gaze and froze. Her parents. And Kemi, standing at the gate again. Her chest tightened instantly. What are they doing here?
she whispered under her breath. Before anyone could react further, Sade's voice rang out sharply. "Stop them! They can't come in here!" The music faltered. Conversations died down. The entire venue shifted toward the tension. "I said I don't know them!" she added, louder now. Her fiancé, standing near the altar, frowned. "What's going on?" Sade forced a smile toward him. "It's nothing. Just people trying to cause trouble." At the gate, her mother's voice broke through the air. "Sade, please, we just want to talk to you." Sade's face hardened. "I don't know you," she said again, louder this time. The words echoed. Kemi stood still, her eyes locked on Sade. There were no tears this time, just a quiet, heavy disappointment. Then, before security could push them out again, another voice entered the scene. "Wait." It was calm, deep, and commanding. Heads turned as an older man stepped forward from among the seated guests. He was well-dressed, dignified, the kind of man whose presence alone demanded attention. Sade's breath caught. She recognized him instantly. The benefactor. The man who had changed her life. "Sir," she said softly, panic flickering beneath her composed exterior. He walked slowly toward the entrance, his gaze moving from Sade to the elderly man leaning on a stick. He stopped. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Is that you?" he asked. The father looked up, confused. Then recognition dawned. "Sir," he said, his voice trembling. A murmur spread through the crowd. The benefactor turned slowly toward Sade. "What is going on here?" he asked. Sade's throat went dry. It's nothing, sir. Just a misunderstanding." The man's expression hardened. "A misunderstanding," he repeated. He turned back to the father. "This is the man who worked for me," he said, his voice now louder, carrying across the venue. "The man who chose honesty when it would have been easier to stay silent." Guests leaned in, listening. "He returned money that wasn't his. He protected my company when no one else would. That act is the reason I decided to sponsor his child." A ripple of realization moved through the crowd. Sade felt her chest tighten. No, this couldn't be happening. The benefactor's eyes returned to her. "And that child," he continued, "was you." Silence fell like a heavy weight. Sade's carefully built world began to crack. "But now," he said slowly, "you stand here, denying the very people who made that sacrifice possible?" Her fiancé stepped forward, confusion written all over his face. "Sade, what is he talking about?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "This man," the benefactor pointed gently toward her father, "gave you the life you are about to celebrate today." The father lowered his eyes, unable to speak. "And you," the man continued, his voice firm, "cannot even acknowledge him?" Whispers grew louder. Guests exchanged glances. Everything Sade had hidden was now exposed. Her fiancé's expression changed, from confusion
to disbelief. "You told me your parents were dead," he said slowly. Sade's voice shook. I can explain." "Explain what?" he cut in sharply. "That you erased your own family because you were ashamed of them?" Tears filled her eyes instantly. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" he demanded. She had no answer, none that could fix this. The silence stretched painfully. Then her fiancé stepped back. "If you can deny your own parents," he said quietly. How do I trust you won't deny me one day? The words hit harder than anything else. Sade felt her knees weaken.
This wedding, he continued, shaking his head. I can't do this. Gasps filled the air. And just like that, everything collapsed. The music stopped completely. Guests began to stand, murmuring, some already leaving. The perfect life she had built, shattered in minutes. Sade turned slowly toward her parents. For the first time in years, she really looked at them. The lines on her mother's face, the weakness in her father's stance, the quiet strength in Kemi's eyes. And suddenly, all the years she had erased came rushing back. Her voice broke. Mummy. Her mother didn't move. Papa.
Her father looked away.
Kemi,
she whispered. Kemi held her gaze, calm but distant. You made your choice, Kemi said quietly. The words were not loud, but they carried everything. Sade dropped to her knees.
I'm sorry, she cried. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far.
But apologies now felt small. Too small. She reached out slightly, but no one stepped forward. For the first time in her life, she was alone. Days passed before she found the courage to return home. This time there were no guards, no audience. Just silence. She stood at the door, her heart pounding. Then knocked softly. Kemi opened it. They stared at each other. I came back, Sade said, her voice barely above a whisper. Kemi stepped aside slowly. Come in. Inside, everything felt the same, but different. Her parents sat quietly. No excitement. No warmth. Just distance. Sade walked in slowly, her eyes filling with tears. I'm sorry, she said again. No one responded immediately. And that silence hurt more than rejection. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Sade stayed, not as the favourite, not as the pride, but as someone trying to rebuild what she had broken. She cooked, she cleaned, she helped her father walk. And every time he hesitated before accepting her help, it reminded her of what she had done. Kemi watched everything quietly. One evening, as Sade helped their father sit down, he finally spoke. You came back, he said. Sade nodded, tears slipping down her face. If you'll let me stay. He looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. It wasn't full forgiveness, but it was a beginning. Across the room, Kemi exhaled softly. Not everything could be undone, but something new could still be built. And in that quiet, fragile moment, the truth finally settled. The daughter they ignored had become their strength, and the one they favoured had to lose everything to understand what love truly meant. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Elite Story TV for more powerful stories like this.